Good evening, everybody. I know we got people live streaming home. What? Is everybody right-handed tonight? Karen, Melanie, did y'all I don't know. Y'all are the ones. Y'all are on this side. Need Jesus. Everybody was like, we're sitting on this side because that side has Jesus. If you watched this morning, you know we're talking about. We're sitting on the Jesus side, okay? And so our Jesus side's pretty full. Our need Jesus side's pretty empty. Is that a good thing? I guess maybe that's a good thing because we're doing that. Yeah. So I'm about to make the camera people very upset with me, but I'm going to do it anyway. I know it doesn't move, so I'm being quick. So we got a lot of stuff to do tonight and a lot of fun to have tonight. So we are going to start tonight. This is the first time we've done this, so we're all learning on the fly. I feel like we should move the chairs over there because, but today's our first day of Missions Month, and we have the Allsips here. I was just telling before, in West Texas, New Mexico, they knew this, but there's a convenience store called Allsips, but they have two L's instead of one. It's the only difference. But anyway, so Jennifer and Craig are here, so they're going to come up here. We're going to ask questions. You can bring your coffee. I'm okay with that. Oh, he's out. I don't have any anyway. Don't need to bring it. We have more. So anyway, we're just going to kind of have some conversation and talk with them this evening. And so that you know, we're going to have a game a little bit, and I do have prizes, gift cards for, let's see. Oh, man. This one goes to Saltgrass, Morton's, Rainforest Cafe, McCormick's, or the Charter House. Nice. We got one for Olive Garden, Longhorn, Cheddar's, Yard House, Bahama Breeze, and Season 52. And listen, you guys watching at home, sorry. Spring Cypress, Texas Roadhouse. So we'll give one of those away each week, and we'll start that here in just a minute. But I want to start with just asking them to share their testimony, how they got saved. And then how, after you've both shared testimony about how you got saved, how you surrendered to missions. Kind of give us that story.
You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll go. As I mentioned this morning, if you're here or watching online, mentioned that I grew up in Southern Baptist churches in Mississippi. Really, as a kid, I was going to church because my friends were going to church. I was going to church because my parents took me there. When I kind of hit that tween age, my parents we moved to a different town, and all my friends went to a church that was about a mile away. And on Wednesday nights, I would walk to church and just hanging out with my friends, being with my friends. But I started to go to a Christian school, and at this Christian school, there was a young lady named Katie there, who was set to evangelize, I think our entire class was her goal. She basically told everyone about Jesus all the time, and which was, believe it or not, we didn't think was that cool as teenagers. But she continued, and though I was going to church and I was listening to sermons and I was hearing my youth pastor speak, a lot of it was sort of going in one ear and out the other. But Katie kept drilling away, plugging away. And so one night we were on the phone and Katie shared with me one more time. And for some reason, the Holy Spirit decided that time was the time for me to get it. And for me to realize that I needed Jesus. And so I ended up surrendering my life to Jesus on the phone with my friend who basically just was nagging everybody to come to Jesus. And I'm pretty sure it probably worked on more people than just me, and probably continues to work on more people than just me. But she did a great job. And, after that, you get saved. You don't immediately fall in line with what Jesus wants you to do, of course. And so life went on for several more years. And then Jennifer and I met in college and started dating, started going to church together, and that's when sort of my faith became more serious. Really became something that I was acting out in my life. Want to go?
Want to tell about missions or?
I didn't think we were there yet. I
Okay.
thought we were going to.
Okay, just this. All right. Okay.
Whatever you want, wherever the Spirit leads, just,
We're good. So I grew up in church. We did like the top three, is that what you call it? Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Every time the doors were open, I was there. My dad served as a deacon, and he was a Gideon for quite a while. And so I was always at church activities. It was all I knew from before I was born until now. So I always had that background. I was probably in 6th grade whenever it started to make more sense to me. And we had been at church on a Wednesday evening, and we came home, and I was lying in my bed, and I just could not go to sleep. Like I knew, okay, if something were to happen to me tonight, I would not go to heaven. And I just could not reconcile that. I couldn't make that nagging feeling go away. And so I got up. I was pretending that I needed to use the restroom, which was across the hall, so that I could see if my parents were still awake. Because whenever I crossed the hall, I would be able to see into the living room to see what they were doing. So I walked across and I glanced up the hall, and I could see my dad sitting in his chair. And so he called, "Jennifer, you need to go back to bed," And so whenever I crossed over again, I motioned for him to come to my room. And so whenever he came in, I started talking to him and told him what was going on. And so I remember, just like it was yesterday, became very emotional and then kind of just ran out of the room. And I thought, "Thanks, Dad. You're just going to leave me here? What are you doing?" But he had gone to get my mom because he didn't want her to miss it either. And so they came back in my room and they talked to me and made sure that I understood. And then they talked me through a prayer and that sort of thing. And then they put me in some discipleship classes, not at the church that we went to. It was very small. There wasn't really any type of programs. But the church in the next town over had a big youth group, and they were doing some discipleship classes for new believers. And so they would drive me over every Sunday evening so that I could go through discipleship class there. And so that really kind of became a foundational, is what helped to develop my foundation and my faith and that sort of thing. But just like Craig said, you know and you believe, but you don't always walk that out, especially through teenage years and that sort of thing. And so I would say probably about the time we started having children, we got really involved in the church that we talked about this morning, High Street. God just surrounded us with people that were so in the Word. The small group that we hosted in our house, Craig mentioned this morning, they were all BBC students. And they just came with such a wealth of knowledge. So every Sunday evening, whenever we would go through our lesson, the conversation that was held afterwards was just like far beyond anything I had ever put that much thought into. And it was really the college students that started to cultivate a love for the scripture and relationship. And it kind of switched from, and I know some of you probably here will be able to relate to this, but to some degree, when you first get saved, a lot of times, especially in the church that I grew up in, you come at it from the angle of, well, I want to believe in Jesus and get saved because I don't want to go to hell. And it changed when I was older to, while that is good, yes, indeed, that's not why I want to pursue a relationship with Jesus. I want to pursue a relationship with Jesus because I recognize the sacrifice that he made for me, and I love him so much for it that I want to pursue that relationship. And so I think that's when my real relationship started to take off.
Okay, so then so you're both saved, you're married, and what was the call to ministry? I know you shared a little bit this morning, so if you can tell us again real quick, but I want to hear Jennifer's her side of that, because sometimes a wife's side is totally different than a husband's side. Not disagree, but just
Yeah. So like I said this morning, Jennifer and I went and did this big around the world trip after we got married, and we thought it was all about us. And along the way, we realized it was all about God and all about us seeing the need of people and realizing that we could meet the need way more easily than we thought it would take to meet the need. So we could help people just as we were, even without jobs and with, not a whole lot, but some backpacks on our back, we could help people and we could tell people about Jesus. And that needed to connect in our brains, I think, that we could actually make a difference. And that's why I love taking people on mission trips, is because they realize that they can make a huge difference a lot faster, a lot more simply than they probably ever imagined. But leading into missions was between that trip and seeing desperate needs all around us and being able to help people with physical and spiritual needs. And then landing at High Street Baptist Church in Springfield, Missouri, where they basically taught us missions, where all of our friends became Baptist Bible College students, and where we realized that missions didn't have to look just one way or just the other way. It could fully encompass what God has gifted us with as far as talents. And so we kind of began to walk the walk a little bit and began to give more financially to missions. And I think somebody pretty important in the Bible, maybe Jesus, said something about what we give our money to, what we give our finances to, where we place our riches. Our hearts tend to lean in that direction. And so that happened in a big way for us, and continues to happen in a big way for us. And so here we are.
Yeah. So God had quite a lot of work to do in my heart to bring me to mission.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I just...
And this is just me being very real and very honest and candid with you. I had a very real desire to do missions whenever we first came home from our trip. When God led us to High Street did a phenomenal job of teaching us missions. They had missionaries in every quarter. We would have missions emphasis night, and we would get to hear people speak, and then we had missions conference every year, and so it became a routine thing. We never missed one. If missions night were happening, we were there. It didn't matter what else was going on in our lives. We never missed it. I loved it. Looked forward to it. It was great. These missionaries, they would stand up and talk, and they would show, I know you guys have seen them, but they'll show the videos and they flash the pictures of people that are in their churches or in their communities or whatever. And I was broken. Every time I would cry, because they represented people that we knew in those same areas, because we had traveled to so many countries. And Craig and I would start home, and I would cry half the way home. And I would tell him, I don't know what this means. Like, God's tugging on my heart. We're supposed to do something, but I don't know what it is. We didn't go to school to do missions. We don't have a Bible degree. We didn't go to school for this. We're working regular jobs. I don't know what we will do with this, but there's something in my heart that says we're supposed to do something else. And so we kept doing more and more in Nepal. And Craig was very focused on doing more in Nepal. And I love Nepal, and I love our kids in Nepal, but I had in my heart a desire to travel the world with my children, because that's what I did with my husband. That's what we did together. It's what we love. And I wanted to take our kids everywhere. And I felt like Craig was going to surrender to missions in Nepal. And I really struggled with that. And I was very just adamant. I built up a wall. I don't want this to happen, And so in 2015, Craig talked about this morning when he went to Nepal in January to interview all of the kids and kind of see what it was that God was leading us to. It was our 10-year wedding anniversary that year. And we had planned a European vacation in June of that year. It was going to be the first time we had traveled internationally since our trip. We were going to take the kids on their first international trip. We were so excited. Well, he decided to go to Nepal, which was in the plans all along. But he would call home to tell me all about what was going on in Nepal. And I'm like, that's great. Do you think you can ask off of work yet? I need to book the tickets for our European vacation. I was so focused on that I couldn't hear what he was saying, And so he came home, and we put together the plan to start the nonprofit. And I just kept asking about this trip to Europe. And I won't ever forget it. We were standing in our kitchen, and he looked at me and said, babe, if we're serious about this nonprofit, we can't go to Europe. We need to save our money.
I'm still in danger a little bit.
I was so
I don't want to be
angry.
in the direction of that gaze. I'm just,
Right? I was so angry. I was just livid, and I was so hurt and felt betrayed that we had planned this trip, and all of these emotions. And we fast forwarded a couple of months, and I got over my anger within a day or two. It was not that big of a deal. But in April, the earthquake hit Nepal, and we were praying and we were doing stuff with our nonprofit, and things were going really well. And then there was a second earthquake, and they announced it on the radio while I was driving to work one day. And it was almost as bad as the first earthquake. And I remember I just broke down in my car, and I cried all the way to work, just like crying out, like, God, please, like these people, they don't know about you. Please give them, like, grant them mercy, like give them a break. They're still sleeping outside, and it just broke me. And I started to realize, there is a love for Nepal there. And if God calls us to Nepal, that will be totally fine, And so I kind of changed my prayer life. And so I had a habit of, in the mornings, I had about a 30-minute drive to work every morning. And so I would listen to my Bible on audio for the first 15 minutes, and then I would I would pray the last 15 minutes. It was kind of like how I centered myself for my day on the way to work. And so I started kind of changing my prayer life, and I started praying, God, if it's just Nepal, if it's always going to be just Nepal, please tame my wandering heart. Like, please take the desire for everywhere else away so that I can focus on what you're calling me to do, because I can't be in all these different places at one time. And so I prayed that from April, when the earthquakes happened, until August. Craig went to Nepal to rebuild shelters, and whenever he came home, he had the meeting with Bruce. And I did not go to the meeting because we thought it was just for advice on what to do with our nonprofit. And he called me at work whenever he left the meeting, and he said, Jen, they offered for us to come on with Manna. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, we would raise support, and we would travel all over the world. We would travel all over the world working in these projects and working with missionaries and all this stuff. And like, I'm getting chills just thinking about it now, but I just so clearly heard God tell me, don't you see, Jennifer, I didn't have to tame your wandering heart. I needed you to submit your heart to me. Like, I needed it to be mine, and then I'll give you so much more than you ever imagined. And so once that happened, I was 100% on board. In fact, I kind of pushed Craig into call Bruce back.
No, really, we should pray about this.
We really should do this, because it was so clear to me, But I tell people all the time, God gave me the desires of my heart, and that could not possibly be a more true statement. In everything I could have ever dreamed my life would be, this tops it all. Yeah.
Wow. Now, aren't you glad we asked that question to her, too? I mean, you never know, and that's why I like to do these kind of things, because we get to hear a heart like that, too. So that's awesome. Okay, I'm going to draw a question here in just a second. Now, we thought we were going to have all career missionaries or one field and stuff like that. So some of these questions I might have to kind of amend to fit the situation. But before I do that, I want to ask you guys one question. I've said to our church before, like, you don't have to be qualified to serve God. Like in John 4, the woman at the well, she got saved. The next thing you know, she's witnessing. Do you guys agree with that? Do you see that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And missions too, like,
Yeah, absolutely. We every now and then somebody calls me pastor, and I always tell them, man, I'm not a pastor. I'm not qualified to be a pastor, but what I am qualified to do is go and serve people and love people, because Jesus told us that we are to love God and we're to love other people. And we're to love other people so much that we go and tell them about Jesus. And we can do that, and anybody can do that. And so that is, he qualifies us when he commands us. And he commands us when he saves us. You know what I mean? Like, he gives us that command to go into all the world when we get saved. There's a story I heard one time about a believer in the Middle East, and apparently, they got saved. this pastor that shared the gospel with them and said, okay, so you've gotten saved, you've gotten baptized, it's time for the next steps. And they're like, all right, what do we do? And the pastor said, write down the 10 people in your life that are least likely to kill you for sharing the gospel with them, and then go do that. And, it doesn't get much tougher than that. In a community where it was dangerous, where it is dangerous to share the gospel openly. We have it much easier than that here. And so I think we're all qualified to do it in whatever way God specifically calls us to do it.
I think a lot of times, and I struggled with this too in the beginning, just because, like I said, we didn't have a Bible degree, and there's a lot that we don't know. But when we lead teams, we try to get everyone on our team to participate in some way in ministry. And a lot of times people say, well, I don't know how to teach, or I don't know how to do this. And I always tell people, just share your testimony. Just share your story with people, because, there's a lot of different, people are divided on different denominational things and different, and you never quite know what you're walking into, as far as who is coming to the church and what knowledge they have. But you can't argue with someone's testimony. You just can't. How am I going to tell you that God didn't do something in your life? And that speaks volumes. The story that God gives you to be able to tell, you're meant to tell it. And I think if you just do that, you're praising God and you're bringing honor to Him, and that can move people. And sometimes it's those stories of things that happen in your own life that sticks with people, that really cultivates a heart change, whereas other things, may not do that quite as easily. So I think in that regard, anybody who is saved has something, a way to teach.
Yeah, and that's what the woman at the well said. Come meet a man who told me all ever I did. This must be the Messiah, right? So as soon as we know him. Okay, let me draw. We're going to stop preaching. You're doing a good job. But I'm going to draw a question, and I don't know. Hopefully it's not Chris's, because I know it Chris. Anyway, okay. Okay, this is good. How do you spend quality time together as a husband and wife and being away from the kids and all? How do you guys, with missions and all you do you make sure and have that time? Or how do you make sure and have that time? Just you guys.
So we've not always done the best job. But having said that, we spend a lot of time together as a family. Most of the time, the four of us are probably around each other most days, every day. But Craig and I, our kids have just gotten to the age where we can leave them at home alone for little short times. And so with the start of the year, we kind of started weekly day dates. And so at least one day per week, we'll leave the kids at home and we'll go out to lunch or whatever we plan to do for that week.
Thai or sushi.
Yeah, we have Thai food or sushi most of the time. But yeah, so we've kind of started that. It's a new thing. It's been a little bit difficult for us just because the kids are homeschooled. They don't go to school because we travel so much. But also because we travel so much, it's been hard for us to make relationships with people where we feel comfortable leaving them. Just because, we have a home in Fort Worth, but we're not always in Fort Worth. So maintaining friendships and relationships has been a difficult part of this. And so now that they are a little bit older, it's kind of given us the opportunity to start to do that. And hopefully we'll get to spend a bit more time in Texas so that we can cultivate some of those friendships and be able to go out at night sometimes, because I don't think our kids are quite there yet. But yeah, it's a growing thing.
Yeah, if you want to bring them down here, we got plenty of babysitters. Bailey will watch them for you.
Yeah, we'll just drive 4 hours.
Yeah, just
drop
each
them off,
way.
go out.
You got it. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so let's do something fun for a second, okay? Not that this is not all fun, but let's play a game and give away a gift card. I asked them for some unique facts about themselves. So I'm going to let whoever wins pick the gift card they want.
Ooh.
Okay?
So you better win first.
Yeah, you get the
then you get more options. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions. Since y'all all are on one side, we're going to make you get up.
We do accept gift cards, by the way.
They do accept gift cards. I want to say that clearly. Okay.
For date night or whatever.
We can't have date night. We just talked about that.
Okay, first question I ask. If you listen and pay attention, you'll know. So everybody stand up. Everybody stand up. This is a game, it's group participation. Okay. I'm going to ask, it's a 50-50 question, so you get a 50-50 guess on this, okay?
You know the answers. You can't play.
Come on, Mom. Okay, here we go. If you listen this morning, you should get this 100% right. But there's going to be some people, okay? Craig used to counsel people as a counselor. If you think that's true, stay on this side. If you think it's false, stay on this side. And we're going to eliminate. This is a choice, because if you you were in children's church.
Okay, do you have to guess?
No cheating. Don't tell them the answer. Okay. Okay. Yes, that's correct. Okay.
Hey.
Good job. You got one right.
Isn't that scary?
Okay. Here we go. Craig loves road trip karaoke. True or false? Craig loves road trip karaoke. True or false? Uh-oh. We got some people switching sides. Don't just stay where you're seated. He's just following his wife.
I know if they were smart, they'd separate so that they'd win.
Hey, did you hear that? Oh. If y'all aren't here, y'all are missing it. I'm just saying. Okay.
Standing right in the middle.
Craig.
What is this? We don't.
Yeah. No, in the middle. You gotta be.
Cheaters.
Okay. Oliver got on one side. Miss Lavonna got on the other. Y'all are playing this smart. Okay. Here we go. Craig, do you love road trip karaoke?
Yes.
Yes. So y'all are in. Y'all are out. Y'all on the false side. Okay. So if you're still in. Well, don't worry, she led her husband wrong too, you know. I'm glad there wasn't a tree with an apple or a fruit there, okay? Okay, true or false? Here's another one, true or false? If you're out, you're out, I'm sorry. Okay, true or false? Y'all people are sitting down, y'all are still in. Okay, here we go. They have been lost in the Gobi Desert before, like completely lost in the Gobi Desert. True or false? Oh.
I just realized I saw the email, so I'm disqualifying myself.
Okay. Oh, we still got people deciding.
Oh.
True or false? They've been lost in the Gobi Desert. This is true. This is false. Okay. Jennifer, is that true or false?
That is true.
Okay, hold on. No, y'all are out. You guys that came over here just on this side. Okay, hold on real quick. Tell us a story.
So in Mongolia, MANA has multiple nutrition centers, and so most of them are in Ulaanbaatar, but we have a couple that are out in remote villages. There are no roads in the Gobi Desert. So once you leave Ulaanbaatar, it's all just driving over sand. And so we left one day, and they told us it could take anywhere between 8 to 12 hours to get there. And I said, well, goodness, that's quite a range. Why is there such a range? And they said, well, it just depends on how lost we get. But really, you drive and you see a little grouping of gears, or what we would call yurts, and they'll stop and ask, and they'll point in a direction, and then you drive in that direction until you see another little grouping of gears, and you stop and ask them, and they point in another direction. But the first time we went, it actually took us the full 12 hours because we did get lost. There was actually someone on the trip paid for the data plan on their phone so that they could get Google Maps to pull up and find a power line so that we could navigate to the power line and follow the power line to the village.
Okay, moral of the story, Google Maps should work on your phone if you go to the Gobi Desert, okay?
At least in some places.
And we did herd camels in the Gobi Desert on foot, which was kind of fun. And a little
Wild
terrifying.
camels?
They're pretty much wild.
Okay, they spit. Watch out. Okay, no, that's something else. Anyway, okay. Okay, here's one. True or false? True, false. Ready? Craig once drove a chariot down the street in Egypt. Craig once drove a chariot down the street in Egypt. True? False?
Nobody has any faith in me.
Man. Hey, look at Q. If you get this right. Oh, there's two of you. Okay. Okay. But it narrows it down to 50-50 if y'all get this right. That Craig has driven a chariot down the streets of Egypt. Craig, is that true or false?
That is false.
False. And the true story is?
I drove a chariot in Egypt.
Okay. Okay, so since we're on there, true or false? Jen once hiked 6 weeks and 550 miles on the Appalachian Trail. Jen once hiked 6 weeks, 550 miles on the Appalachian Trail. True or false? I'm going to give you a second to decide. True, false. Is anybody on the tech team playing still? Okay, I'm just making sure. Y'all can play. I'm just, leave the cameras alone. We just, Okay, is everybody where they want to be? Okay, is that true or false?
That is false. But Craig did.
Craig did that. 6 weeks, man.
That was my bachelor party. Me and a friend of mine went for 6 weeks straight on the Appalachian Trail.
Boy,
Right
when
before
they do
getting
a
married.
trip, it's all out. Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. True or false? This is the difficult one because you won't believe it even if it's true. Jennifer got arrested for driving on an expired license. Just don't give it away. Don't give it away. True or false? True or false? Do we have anybody on this side? Okay, Jordan. Is that it? Okay, Jennifer, is that true or false?
That is false.
It's false. I just totally made it up right here on the spot. Jordan. Anybody else? Jordan.
Good job.
He knows his missionaries that he didn't know.
He's been stalking our Facebook for 10 years to prepare for this moment.
Y'all are going to start every missionary from now on. Y'all are going to start in their Facebook right now and going, okay, we got to make sure we know that. Okay. Let's draw another question. I'm going to put my Bible down. I want to put it on the ground. Okay, let me draw another question. Okay. Here in a second, if you didn't write a question down, but you have one that you've thought of, here in a second, I'm going to give you a chance to ask it. You can answer too if you want, but Okay, here's a good one. How does your country celebrate Easter? Or do they?
Okay.
So, you're going to answer?
All right, so we go to lots of countries. So I'll give a general statement and then one little specific. Most of the countries throughout Asia are Buddhist, or they're Hindu, or they're atheist. So the communist countries that we know of in Asia are mostly more atheistic countries. Then there's Nepal, India, that are primarily Hindu and some Buddhism as well. There's Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Thailand, those regions that are mostly Buddhist. So most of those places, they don't celebrate Easter at all. They wouldn't have a concept for Easter. They typically view Christianity as an American religion, and they're fine with us keeping it over here because they have their religions, in their minds. The one caveat, and that's the general, but then the specific is the Philippines, where they have a strong Roman Catholic background in much of the Philippines because of Roman Catholics coming over there many, many years ago and doing some synchronistic stuff where they've tied in their Roman Catholic beliefs and a lot of the things that we would say, okay, these are people from the Bible, Peter Paul and John and like all these people from the biblical times, the Roman Catholics have sort of melted that into sort of localized religions and beliefs and animistic type stuff. And they actually, around Easter in the Philippines, and don't Google it because you probably don't want to see, but there are these huge crowds of people that come together. And each year there are people who basically sacrifice themselves to be the person that is crucified on Easter, literally with spikes through the hands and ankles and all that stuff. And then they pull them down before they die, of course. But there are actually those people that believe that somehow that is necessary for their faith. And so that's the one caveat. They actually do celebrate Easter, but they celebrate it in a very shockingly twisted way in a lot of areas in the Philippines around Easter.
We had to study that when I was in Bible college about that practice and stuff like that, which amazes me that they turned Easter into a death instead of a resurrection.
They're celebrating the wrong end of the
right.
the whole deal.
And we meet on Sunday because we're celebrating his resurrection. Every Sunday we're celebrating his resurrection, but they've turned Easter into that. So that's okay. Let me draw another one. Another question, and then after this we'll see if anybody has a question out there. Okay, what has been the biggest blessing in your ministry so far? That's a tough one. Biggest.
Everybody's looking at me.
So, whenever you become a missionary full time and you quit your job and you sell your house and you quit it and you sell a car and you do all the things that you need to do and then you begin to travel the country to try to raise your support, it is one of the most on edge, exciting times, but at the same time it's one of the most scary times. I think especially when you have kids. Because all of a sudden we're going from great jobs, great money, great house, everything but the white picket fence, and going, okay, we'll just expose our family to what if no money comes next month? And so you step out in faith to do that, and one of the biggest, greatest blessings has been the fact that whenever we've stepped out in faith, whether it's that or anything else really, but specifically with our support, raising, and things like that, God has shown himself good. And he's done that through partnership. And he's done that through people. He's done that through churches all over the United States. He's done that through some businesses and business people and a little bit of everything in between, so that not once have we had to go hungry because we didn't have anything to eat. Not once have we had to, tell our kids they couldn't buy new pants because their pants were, high waters, which Sarah's are about every 1 month. Anyway, but God has always provided and has always been our provider in and through this. And it's been interesting because at times it's been the least likely candidate. Like every church, every person, everybody that we thought would support us sort of in the beginning didn't. And then everybody that we didn't know, the churches that we just sort of ran into the pastor somewhere have come alongside us and supported us big time. And I think it's just God's way of reminding us that it's not about us, and it's not about, it's not the business world. It's not necessarily about who you know. It's about who God has in store for you. And who, we went to this class to learn how to support raise after we came on with Manna, because we thought that was probably a good start. Because we were like, ask for money? What? And we were always told not to do that, but but then you become a missionary and things change. And they said, it'll often be the least likely sources that come on and support you. It'll be when you get to the end of your rope, God goes, okay, now let's actually do something. And And they told us that God shows up in incredible ways and will continue to do that. And that all that we need to do is put ourselves out there and step out in faith. And that God already has the partnerships in mind. God already has the steps planned ahead for us to find our support. So our job is to find it. God's job is to provide it. And so as we just travel the country and speak and meet people, we have to keep that top of mind, that our job is to go out and receive and find the blessing that God's already put out there for us.
You want to add something, Jennifer? You're more than
Yeah,
welcome.
sure.
Okay.
I'll add something. So I think probably the biggest thing for me has just been, as we've taken mission teams and we get to travel to different mission projects, hearing the stories of people on the field. That's always my favorite part of going on a mission trip, is just getting to sit down with the missionaries and getting them to hear or tell us about what God is doing there, how he's making a difference in the community, tell us or introduce us to families who have come to faith. And because it's such a constant reminder of the goodness of God all over the world. I think sometimes we sit in our churches and we kind of get shielded, as far as what's going on the other side of the planet. But when you get to travel and lead teams and you're consistently in different places where people don't live the same lifestyle that we do or have the same access to the gospel that we do, and then you hear stories of transformation in their lives or things that just don't even make sense. I mean, we heard a story in Cuba one time about a pastor from the Cayman Islands that came on a mission trip, and he had no idea, but the church that they just happened to drive by and stop at had been praying about buying the property behind them. And the guy who went on a mission trip he owned a car lot, and he prayed specifically that God would help him sell an extra car, and he would take that car, the sale of that car, and use it for something on his mission trip to Cuba. And they got there, and it was the exact amount of money that was needed to purchase that land. And the people from the Cayman Islands weren't going to serve this church in Cuba. They were on their way to the airport. They had been serving another church, and they just happened to pass by, and it was Easter. I think it was Easter, some holiday. And the church happened to be having a later afternoon service, and so they were still there. And this team was early, and they said, well, let's just stop and we'll see what's going on here. And this guy, he didn't know the situation. He bought the land because it had mango trees on it, and he loved mangoes. But, that seems so silly, but how God provided, and just getting to hear stories like that you're just like, wow, like how God pieced all of that together. And it's just such a reminder that God is still working in such incredible ways, and it doesn't happen just here in the States. It's everywhere, and it's in different ways in different places, and it's just such a good reminder of that.
Awesome. Okay, I want to ask a question. I'm going to see if anybody has a question out there. We'll ask in just a second. But I do want to point out one thing. Jennifer, were you surprised that so many people thought you got arrested?
Yes, I was.
Okay, I'm just, like George kind of glad that he was the only one that thought you did. But
Yeah,
I was kind of like, wait, there's only one person doesn't think she's been arrested?
I was also a little bit upset that not many people thought I could hike the Appalachian Trail. I really couldn't, but
well,
I'd like you to think I could at least.
I was surprised, like all them people thought you got arrested. I was like, what? Anyway, okay, who has a question? Who has a question for them? Anybody that you didn't write down? Okay, I saw Robert first. Now, I'm going to repeat it, Robert, because people might, I don't know if anybody's watching online, but at least, so you ask a question, I'll repeat it.
What has been the most difficult part about being a missionary?
Okay, what's been the most difficult part of being a missionary?
The most difficult part for me has probably been different from what has been most difficult for Craig, but the most difficult part for me has been the loss of relationships, I think. Especially recently, when we first started everything 5 to 6 years ago, it was all new and exciting and fun, and it still is. I don't mean to imply that it's not. But we moved from Springfield. We left all of our family, well, not family, but all of our friends and stuff there. All of our family is in Mississippi. We deposited ourselves in Texas, and we didn't know anybody at all, really. But we weren't there long enough to develop friendships there or get super involved in a church there, because our goal is to be in a different church every Sunday so that we can raise support for that. And because of that, it doesn't allow us a lot of time at home. And so now it's starting to wear on me, especially as my kids have gotten older. They are craving relationships, and then I start to recognize, hey, I need relationship too. Like I want to do a ladies' Bible study so badly, but I can't because we're in a different church every Sunday and we're not at home. And so some of that didn't so much bother me in the beginning has started to wear on me a bit now. And I think, at least currently, that is the most difficult thing for me. And then watching my kids struggle with that as well. Jude is kind of still young enough that he doesn't really care, but Sarah, she's 10 now, and she wants to have stable friendships and that sort of thing. And so trying to find a balance between how we travel versus how we are at home. And so to provide some of that is kind of what we're going into this year. We came into the new year with the goal of trying to find more Texas churches to be in so that we can do more weekend trips and be at home during the week so that we can have the kids in activities and I can participate in some stuff. And so it's always walking a balance between doing what God is asking you to do and putting yourself out there versus also meeting the needs of your family as they're ever changing. And so yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now, but that's definitely what I
So
struggle
you were
with the most.
excited that the missionary we had COVID. You could come in the state for this weekend.
Exactly. Like
Okay,
if you
just
had been
checking to
across
get that
the
on
line
tape,
in Oklahoma, I don't know.
We don't want Oklahoma. Well, we don't talk about it. Craig, what's your...
Wow.
Leave it to the pastor of the
that's
church
a
to
lot.
just dig that knife in.
I think probably the most difficult, or one of the most difficult things for me has been the extent to which we know the need. Because we've traveled, now we've been to 91 countries, I think, we both have. And because we know the extent of the need and the desperation of the need, we have a different sort of fire under us to try to help to do more and to meet the need. And yet we are tasked with traveling around, speaking in churches, and asking people to partner. And that has been great in a lot of ways. Like I said a minute ago, it's kind of two sides of the coin. We've seen our personal support has been incredible. We've been able to raise lots of project support and mission teams and things like that. But what I struggle with probably too often is that my timing isn't always God's timing. And my desire for what I want for someone isn't always what either they want or maybe what God has for them in a lot of ways. I think there are times in the United States, but around the world, where Christians get very distracted from the gospel and from going and from serving and giving and doing all the things that we're supposed to do. And as I speak to people, I want everybody to raise their hand and go, yes, I've got to be more of a part. I've got to give more and serve more and go more and pray more and do all the things more. And that hasn't happened yet, ever. It's kind of what Paul wrote, I think, in multiple different ways throughout Paul's writings. He implied and said, it's not what I want from you, it's what I want for you. And so it's because we know the extent of the need, and we also know how incredible it is to get to be a part of meeting the need physically, spiritually for people, that we want more for people than sometimes we get to see realized, at least in the time frame that I hope for.
Great question. Another question you guys have? Oh, Lauren.
Did you ever get back to Nepal and actually hike Everest?
Okay, did they ever get back to Nepal and hike Everest?
No.
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 They gave up that dream. They said, I ain't doing that. That's too hard.
We've not.
No,
We've seen
no.
it multiple times flying past in a nice pressurized cabin with snackies.
They got
and
way
a
above
pillow.
it. They went way above it.
Yeah. We've seen many of the top 10 tallest mountains in the world at this point in Nepal, but we've yet to try to hike up any of them again. We just thought that was probably God going, get and stay off the mountain.
Yeah. You know, for a long time we thought that maybe it was just a fluke. You know, maybe it was just that God wanted us to get off the mountain so that we could have the time in Pokhara and make the connections that we did. But it was summer 2019.
Yeah.
Summer 2019, Manna did a hike on the John Muir Trail to raise money for a project in Mongolia, I believe it was. And so Craig was scheduled to do the hike, and like 2 days in, he got altitude sickness again. And so we just realized, and he even took all the medicine, like the Diamox or whatever that you're supposed to take that helps you to not have issues, and he still got sick and had to come home. So our bodies are not made for high altitude, I guess, or at least his is not. I haven't tried again, but I assume mine is not as well.
So funny thing, the first time I tried to hike Everest and got altitude sickness, God got us off the mountain and dropped us in Pokhara, the town we never planned to go to meet all the people we fell in love with, our kids that we sponsored there, and really to be a big part of the catalyst of what led us here today. The second time I got altitude sickness on the John Muir Trail a couple years ago, I had to get off the trail, and we had another group that was sort of getting off the trail at the same time, and they had planned to get off. I planned to do the whole thing, and so we all got off together. And on the ride home from the trail with those people, there was a businessman and his wife who decided to partner with us on that trip. So God's two for two on this whole.
So what mountain you going to next?
Getting me off a mountain for something better. So.
I mean, you should keep doing all the mountains and not making it. It's the
so,
best of both worlds.
If
You
the
don't have to
sickness weren't
hike
so
it,
bad,
and
you know.
you get support.
Like the
or get where
greatest
God
failure
wants.
ever. That's what I would be.
I'm telling you, I am now going to hike all the highest mountains for about 1/8%, okay? And then see what God does. No. Okay, anybody else have a question? Okay, Brian?
Do most countries you go to think that Christians are just from America?
Okay, do most countries you guys go to think Christians are just from America?
A lot of them, yeah. So they will even say, "Oh, that's the American God," and they just believe, especially in Hinduism, because they have so many gods that they worship. There's something like 30 million or 300 million or something. There's so many.
A lot.
They incorporate Jesus as another one of the gods, but they just label him as the American God. And that's why a lot of times it's so difficult to get a true conversion or to understand if someone has truly converted from Hinduism, because they'll tell you, "Oh yeah, I believe in Jesus." But really what they believe is that he's just one of the other 300 million gods. They don't actually believe that he is the one true God, forsaking everyone else. But yeah, a lot of people, they believe that all Americans are Christian and that Jesus is the American God.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things that you run into is trying to convince someone that no, Jesus actually looked more like you than he looks like me. You know, that like Jesus doesn't look like me. Jesus didn't grow up in America. Jesus is much more Eastern than Western. And getting people to understand that and to realize that is interesting.
Good questions. Anybody else? Mary?
What's the weirdest foods that you guys have?
Ooh.
What's the weirdest food you've eaten? You always have to have a food question for Missionary.
Of
Just,
course, yes. So the weirdest food we've eaten is, well, Craig said durian, but that used to be the answer, but that's no longer the answer. The worst food, durian, if you do not know, is a fruit in Singapore, Southeast Asia. It's about the size of a jackfruit, and it has little pods inside, and you scoop the pods out, and it's very slimy, and it smells so bad that the public transportation has signs inside of it with the durian and like the X over it. Like you can't bring it on the public transportation because it stinks so badly. So durian used to be my answer because it's terrible for sure. But
and there's a worse.
There's a worse. There's a worse one. So milk cookies in Mongolia is the worst thing I've ever had, and it's basically horse milk, and horse milk or camel milk?
Horse, I believe.
Horse, I think. So they take
If you can catch them.
Yeah. So they take the milk. They wait till it like curdles on the top, I guess is how you would say it, and then they like pat it together into patties, and they put it on top of their roof until it bakes in the sun, and then it's crumbly and it's awful. It's the most awful thing ever.
You know that kid in elementary school that ate chalk?
It has the
He would love those.
consistency of chalk, what you would think. So, yeah, it's really bad. And I dodged most of our trip, our first trip over there, without having to get this because everybody offers it to you because it's their sweet treat or their, you know, what they have. It would be like offering people cookies at our house if they came over or a piece of cake. So they all offer it. And every time I was able to kind of, you know, get outside and toss it to the side or whatever, get rid of it and not have to eat it. But we were at a church service in Mongolia, and it is their custom, in most Asian countries actually, but it is their custom after church they have snacks together. And so the church service ended and people were passing out cookies. And so I took one so as not to be rude, with the intent that I would sneak to the trash as soon as I could and throw it away. The problem was that people kept talking and it was beginning to melt in my hand. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to have to eat this cookie. It can't possibly be that bad. I'll just hurry up and get it down as fast as I can and it'll be okay. And I had to bolt for the door after I put it in my mouth because it was the worst thing ever. So, yes.
I once had a lady give me a fried banana in Singapore. We're not good with foods. We kind of like eat white rice a lot when we travel. We are not risky food eaters. And I had a lady give me a fried banana, which I thought, I'm from Mississippi, I'll probably like this. No, not so much. I ate a bite of it, and then I turned to Jennifer and was like, I can't. And it's Singapore, everywhere's super clean, so you're kind of like, what do I do with this fried banana? And so we slowed down our walk, our gait for a minute, and we let her get a few feet in front of us, and then I proceeded to drop kick it across the road into the bushes. Sorry, Lenny. Anyway.
Hopefully, they're not watching right
Right,
now
right.
and live stream and saying, what? You know, like, oh, you know. So let me ask you this question. You've been in 91 countries.
Mm-hmm.
How many of them were on the backpacking trip, and how many have been since?
76 on the backpacking trip.
Went to 76 in 16 months, and then we've added the extra, 15 since then, but we've been back to a bunch of the other ones because of our work with Manna and layovers. If you ever go on a mission trip with us, one of the things I was telling Pastor last night was that we always try to book a long layover on the way home somewhere cool. So we've had long layovers in Hong Kong and Beijing, Doha and Dubai, and we've had layovers in Paris as a family. We've had, a bunch of different, Singapore, all over the world. So we always try to plan in those so that we can take teams and go do something fun on a long layover too. So we
And
picked
was
up
it in
extra
Hong Kong?
countries.
In China. What was the one in China you told me about?
So Beijing, yeah, we had the team, I built it into the price of the trip for everybody that we would have a tour bus pick us up at the airport, kind of as a surprise for everyone, and then take everybody to the Great Wall of China. And we had like 12 hours, so they drove us to the Great Wall. They gave us this great tour along the way of, interesting facts about China. And then we all hiked up the Great Wall of China, walked around for 2 or 3 hours on the wall, and then there's a luge-like cart thing that you can ride off of the Great Wall at that point. And so we rode that off, and then got to the bottom and had lunch, and then went back to the airport. So.
That's a great day right there, just in that. Okay, it's almost 7 o'clock. I'm going to ask one more question. We're going to end with this question. Oh, Moises got a question. Okay, Moises. No, go ahead.
No, I was just curious. I mean, with so many countries that you've visited, what things you found yourself doing here in the States when you basically say, I mean, because after country number 5, you're a citizen of the world. I mean, you're ingrained with, you guys may be picky with the food, but the culture has, stuck in you, I guess, for lack of better terms. And you also, like you said, you see the need. Like the need is prevalent. So how does that affect the way you live here in the States? Because you have a very in intense mission trips going out there, like if you guys were there, but you're still here. So I'm curious to know, like, how do you live your life here in the States? And you find yourself that has dramatically changed because of all these experiences in the other countries and because of the need.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat the question for anybody who's watching online or later watching. And the question is, how has your travel through all the countries affected how you live here? Am I summarizing that right, Moises? Okay.
That's good.
I think sometimes, okay, so it's kind of two-part. In some ways, I feel like it hasn't had that much of an impact on us, and then other times I realize that it has had an impact on us. And I guess I can say that because it happened gradually to some degree, but it's also just embedded into who we are now. So things we just don't recognize, you know. For instance, at Christmas, we were at home and I was having a conversation with my mom, and she was saying, you know, sometimes it's hard for us to start a conversation with you because you have all these experiences that we don't have, you know, talking about my parents and my sisters. You have all these experiences that we don't have. And, you know, to me, that just seems crazy. Like, I'm still Jennifer. I still grew up in your home, you know, I'm still the same person. But at the same time, I can kind of see that a little bit, you know. I think we make more, because of like the savings and things that we did for our trip, and we saw the great benefit to that and how it paid off. I think how we financially lead our lives is much different. Not just, and again, that's twofold too, in that it's our personal lives and how we spend our money and what we save for and the way that we manage money and things like that, just because of the way that we save for that trip, but also in the way that we give, because we have seen the need and we know what is going on and how a little bit can make a huge difference. So yeah, I mean, I guess that would be it. The other thing is, I didn't realize, like Craig said, we're super safe eaters, and we are to some degree. We're much more adventurous than probably anybody in this room whenever it comes to eating other cultures' foods. And I didn't realize that as much, but Craig's parents wanted to go to Key West for Christmas, and so we went down with them because, as I told Pastor at lunch today, I think it was Pastor, his mom had never even been on an airplane before. So we drove over to Jackson, Mississippi, and we helped them fly down to Key West. And Craig and I wanted to try all the things. You know, and our kids are the same. They want to try all the things, and his parents wanted to eat at Wendy's. And and so after a week of being in Key West, we're like, so Craig and I actually had our anniversary down there the last night before we flew home, and so his parents kept the kids, and Craig and I went out, and he said, where do you want to eat? I said, anywhere not American. I need something with some spice to it, you know?
Yeah.
And so that has changed us too, but again, we don't recognize it until we're around people who, you know, only flavor or only use salt and pepper seasonings. So.
Yeah, we probably eat 10 times more rice than the average American, just, you know, from traveling in Asia. And really everywhere in the world, rice is such a staple, rice and beans. But yeah, budgeting, some food choices are probably different. I think the way we also view our kids might be quite a bit different in that, you know, I expected to get to have and do all the things I wanted to do as far as activities and all of those things when I was a kid. And it was just like the normal, like we just did life like everybody else, you know? I think because of the way we've, you know, seen some things in the world and seen what kids have and don't have, that guides our decisions on sometimes what to buy and what not to buy and what we're going to allow them to do and what we're not going to allow them to do, which probably they're not happy with sometimes. But you know, hopefully it's a teaching moment as they grow up. And as they also experience these places with us and alongside us, then they realize also that their life is different, but yeah, it probably should be.
Okay, I want to finish with this last question. I saw it in there, and I had to just ask it. Fun question, not you don't have to go super deep with this. Okay? I think I know who wrote it, but which vacation? Toes in the sand, lost in the woods, or haunted city tour?
Okay, so you know which one it's not. And then we're going to be split on it. Toes in the sand for Jennifer. She and Sarah are both beach people. And then in the woods on a mountain somewhere for me, even though hopefully not too high of a mountain. Like a eastern U.S. mountain. Yeah. But yeah, in the woods, lost, hiking, doing all the adventurous outdoorsy stuff for me. And for Jennifer, just, I don't know.
If I
I
can
don't know
hear the
what
waves,
people
I'm
do on
good.
the beach.
Yeah.
The only time I like going to the ocean or the water or the beach or anything is if I'm snorkeling or scuba diving, because and if there's something to see. Otherwise, it's pretty useless for me. I'm like, I'm just burning. It's not good.
I feel your pain. Yeah. My wife is Puerto Rican. She loves sand, and I go out there. And true story, we go out there and we go, okay, we got to get shade for Carl and sun for Melanie. You know, so get that. Well, it's been an awesome night. I hope you know our missionaries better just from some of the questions. And as you think about that, maybe there's some questions you want to write down and put for the next missionary that you thought of tonight. Excuse me. But it'll also be that you can ask questions. I'm going to let you guys ask questions like you did tonight. So thank you guys for being here. Remember, next week, same basic thing. We'll have a missionary Sunday morning, and Sunday night we'll do this. So thank you guys for being here. Let's pray. Let's stand and be, just so y'all can stretch your legs for a second. And in honor of God, what he's doing. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Hey, Moises, could you close us in prayer?
Father God, we thank you